Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Jonas versus Price fight. And so, if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into this. So, this is Boxer's second ever all women's card, all women's show. The first one went down amazingly, to be completely honest, and I think it shocked a lot of boxing fans just how well it did go down. And that's what Boxer has been able to do kind of over the other big major promotions in the UK. I mean, you've never seen Queensberry or Matchroom really kind of attempt this all women's type of show and have this much success. And the Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall fight was an excellent fight in which the build up was amazing, the whole fight was a brilliant fight, and in general the whole card was excellent as well. It was just a great showcase of women's boxing, and it showcased how far it had come, and the fact it was able to sell out a whole massive venue was just incredible. And it's spurred on to there to be now a second instalment of that, where we of course see Jonas versus Price headlining, being the main fight. Obviously, it's a fight which doesn't quite have the same level of animosity about it. I don't think both of them kind of hated each other, or are hating each other as much as what Shields and kind of Marshall did. That whole kind of fiery build up was a proper rivalry. But this one has definitely still had moments in which the build up has been interesting and entertaining. I mean, just a couple days ago, from the time of me recording this, we saw Price kind of outsmart Jonas, and Jonas looked quite silly when she was saying that they'd already fought before, where Jonas hadn't fought Lauren Price, she fought Becky Price back in the amateurs in 2012. And so something like that, you don't normally see someone like a Natasha Jonas make that type of a mistake. She's a very typically well-spoken individual who still is clearly very smart as well, and she just made a bit of a slip up there. But amongst this, there was also that kind of face-off that they did after Jonas beat Habazin last time out and Price beat Matthias. They had the whole event where, there was one fight in it, and, there was, if they both won that fight, then they would get through, and then they would be able to, as a result of that, be able to go on to fight each other. And, there's been countless of times where that hasn't actually happened, where we've kind of seen two fighters be put up against each other. Meant to be put up against each other, but there'd be one more fight before that, and then one of them mess up, one of them lose, and I was fearful that that was going to happen. We've seen it happen not too long ago with Deontay Wilder slipping up and then losing it versus Joseph Parker, and then the fight versus Anthony Joshua being out the window. This to an extent had similarities of that kind of aspect, but both of them of course managed to get through and looked very good whilst doing so. I mean, Jonas, I think, looked excellent whilst doing so, and Price did so as well. And so it's definitely an important must-need matchup, and a great matchup as of that. And so like I say, this is a great all-women's card. I'm going to kind of go through the kind of other fights in it before I get too in-depth into the main event in Jonas versus Price. But there has been a couple things which underlying isn't good on Boxer's side of things. I mean, Boxer have a lot of pressure at the moment. They've got to their contract, being talked about possibly being renewed, being not renewed with Sky come May time, from what I believe. And so there is a lot of pressure on them to, put on excellent shows, really deliver in these last few shows before they, possibly get this big deal extension with Sky or not. And so they have been, putting on big events as a result. They've got three big ones kind of in the pipeline. This one, Ben versus Cameron 2, and then Ben versus Eubank Jr. And so they do have some big shows, but I feel like they are definitely reliant that bit more so on the women on that side of things, because on the men's side of things, we've just seen Joshua Boatsi, lose in a very close fight versus Callum Smith, which was, a very well fought fight, but still, coming off a loss. Ben Whittaker, of course, is coming off a loss. Chris Bellum-Smith is coming off a loss. Richard Riakporhe and Lawrence Okoli have moved over to Queensberry to be fighting. So they're realistic. You know, Adam Azim, of course, is a big name, but he hasn't been quite tested at a world level just yet. But there is, you know, not quite, you know, the face of men's boxing from the side of things of Boxer. I mean, of course, they're kind of relying on Chris Eubank Jr. And realistically, if Eubank Jr. loses to Ben, then that's a really big name who, you know, only fights rarely, who may not be coming in, you know, may not be as big of a sell if he does lose to Ben. You know, it seems like there'll be a rematch no matter what. So at least there's two fights there, big fights in the pipeline for Boxer. But is Sky really going to look at that and be like, wow, there is, you know, a huge fight there with Chris Eubank Jr. Let's put on another 5 year deal and see what happens just for one fight? I'm not entirely sure. But it just means, like I say, I feel like boxers are definitely reliant on their women to be able to come through and to deliver and to look really good. But it also means that they have to be willing to give them opportunities, let them have fights. And like I said, there's been a bit of an underlying kind of issue with this card. I mean, they've kind of upset and mistreated both Savannah Marshall and Fran Hennessy in the build up to this. You know, Fran's still been able to get a fight on this card, and it's still a tough fight, but it's definitely not, from what I believe, the kind of fight in which she was envisioning or really wanting. She definitely has that ability to become a star in the women's scene. She is, you know, got that entertaining personality. She'll have the, you know, flashy ring walks, and she's got the last name and everything like that. So she does have them capabilities, but she's got to be treated correctly, because otherwise she will just leave boxer, because I'm sure there will be lots of other promotions happy to have a fighter as good as Fran Hennessy. And then Savannah Marshall, you know, Savannah Marshall was the one who sold and made, you know, alongside Clarissa Shields, the huge first all women's event. And she is more than deserving to have a good fight on this card. And it's just been interesting to see how, you know, she rocked up to that first press conference expecting to be on the bill, and then she just wasn't, and there wasn't really too much communication. And so it's just weird to see, you know, why that's happened. I mean, Ben Shalom seemingly hasn't really said too much as to why there wasn't too much communication, but it's just, you know, not nice to see, in my opinion, because I feel like these fighters have, you know, they're huge fighters in their own right, both of them, and they deserve to be treated well. And this show could be even more, you know, more so better if Fran Hennessy was in a better fight, and if Savannah Marshall was on the card, even if she was against a fighter in which nobody had ever heard of. She's a big sell there, and so definitely could have been, you know, bringing even more eyes onto it if Savannah Marshall was on this, because she hasn't fought in a long time either. So, you know, it's just a shame to see. Of course, like I say, there are still some great fights on the card, and we'll get through, you know, some of them now. I mean, Gamba versus Bavington as a fight is an excellent fight. I mean, Gamba coming off the Olympics, she's making her professional debut. She signed with Boxer. That's a big, good signing. Boxer have been good with signing, you know, all these Olympic fighters. I mean, they signed Fraser Clark, they signed Lauren Price, they signed Karis Ardenstall, also on this card. They've signed Garber, you know, Ben Whitaker as well. And you know, this is a new face to have in the women's scene. And she's starting off with a very tough fight versus Kirsty Bavington. I mean, Bavington, you know, hasn't always had the most of success, but for a first fight, it's crazy, to be completely honest. I feel like they're definitely going to try and move Gamba fast, and you know, it wasn't that long ago where Babington was fighting Price, and that was for the first ever kind of British title fight. And Babington still has a very clear winning record, and so it's just going to be a very tough fight for Gamba. And I feel like it's the perfect fight to be on this kind of a show, you know, alongside some of the other great fights in this show, which I'll go through in a minute. But these are some good women's fights and some tough women's fights, whereas, you know, they haven't always been tested to the most part, the women's fighters on boxers side of things just yet, and I feel like they all are getting tested, which is really nice to see. Of course, also Artenstall versus Chapman, another fight in which I'm not going to give a prediction for, but it's a great matchup, and I think, you know, Chapman is deserving of a big fight. I was kind of interested to see how her career would move and to progress as a result of course, losing for the world title against Sky Nicholson. She lost quite badly and quite convincingly, but at the same time, you know, Sky Nicholson is a very difficult fighter to be able to deal with, because it's just so difficult to get in range and to really pin her down. But Chapman still has very good skills and has still showcased that, so definitely can cause an upset to that of Artinstall, who, isn't anywhere near the kind of similar style fighter as to that of Sky Nicholson. Realistically, I don't think many women's fighters are, but it's going to be a great fight, I think that, and I really was surprised to first of all hear it on the show, but it's, the more I've thought about it, the more that kind of a fight has grown on me, amongst another fight in which I want to speak about on this card, which I will give a prediction for, that being Watson versus Zapotoczna for the EBU European Flyweight title. Zapotoczna was somebody who I had the pleasure to interview a little while ago, and this was kind of before everything kicked off with her fighting Shannon Ryan and then her beating Maisie Rose Courtney. She, before that, was just seemingly progressing along on the small hall and, wasn't sure when she was going to get a big opportunity, but she's had these big opportunities and she's been able to, you know, look good. I mean, against Shannon Ryan, it was a very tough, durable fight where she had to showcase a lot of heart, but she didn't box badly and she had, success at times. Shannon Ryan in the end was able to beat her up, but she made Shannon Ryan bleed bad, and it wasn't, a bad fight at all. And so when she got announced that she was going to be fighting Maisie Rose Courtney, I was very happy to see that that fight was happening because, Maisie Rose had kind of been, progressed a little bit slowly, but, was needing of a kind of next step up opponent. And I was hoping that Zapotoczna, she'd gone back to fighting on the small hall and was deserving of another opportunity. And then she got that versus Maisie Rose. And she was able to have a lot of success and be able to win and cause the shock upset and look good whilst doing so, putting on another kind of durable performance where she was just too much for Maisie Rose and, showcased that Maisie Rose wasn't there at the same kind of level and couldn't match the physicality of Zapotoczna. And so it's definitely, been great to see that this progression. I was maybe thinking there may be a rematch with Maisie Rose kind of announced, but obviously that hasn't happened, and we've got given this opportunity, which is a huge opportunity for Zapotoczna versus Chloe Watson, who, Watson has herself, not had the craziest level of opponents realistically, and she is EBU European champion, but she won it 2 fights ago, not against a crazy high ranked opponent. Then she was meant to fight, I believe, Zapotoczna before, but that fight, from what I remember, fell through, and then she kind of just fought a journeywoman as a kind of change her opponent on a Wasserman show. But now she's this fight's happening, and it's fight happening on a bigger occasion, so it means she's probably going to be getting paid more as a result, and so it's just great to see that she's back fighting at European level. I feel like that's definitely at a minimum where she belongs, and it's nice to see that other promotions are getting involved with this show, similarly to that of the Riyadh season shows. Other promoters are getting involved and working together. I feel like they kind of all have to at this point and to make some of the best fights. And Watson being on this show, I think is excellent. I think she is a high quality fighter who really has the potential to go to the top if she is progressed the right way. I think that Watson will win via unanimous decision. Yes, I've interviewed Zapotoczna. Yes, I really rate Zapotoczna. Yes, I think it's going to be a hard fight for Watson, but I do think Watson is better than that of a Maisie Rose Courtney. I feel like she is sharper with combinations. She won't stay in the pocket quite as long. She probably won't get dragged into a fight quite as much, and will be that kind of faster, more skillful fighter who can throw that bit cleaner than that of Zapotoczna, and then go on to be able to win by unanimous decision and have success and cement herself as a European champion. And then hopefully, as a result of that, it's a big win to be able to beat Zapotoczna. So I feel like possibly a world title could be knocking on the door, to be completely honest, or if not, then maybe one more fight and then a world title. I feel like Chloe Watson, like I've said, has great potential, and so that fight definitely could happen. So hopefully we could see that happen. Maybe if not, an Emma Dolan fight could happen if she gets through her fight. That's a deserving fight to Emma Dolan. So there are definitely great contests there to be made. So hopefully we will see them happen. We will just have to wait and see. But yes, of course, like I say, I feel like Watson will win via unanimous decision. And then to speak about, the co-main event on this card, Dubois versus Shin for the WBC World Lightweight title. Dubois yet again is defending her title. She's coming off a performance versus Kamara where I thought it would be a much closer fight than what it was, to be completely honest. Yes, it was classed as a draw, but everybody knew that Dubois won. There was no disputing it. They weren't going to make a rematch or anything like that because Dubois came out the blocks fast and she looked destructive. The only reason why, of course, it didn't go to end up being a win and it got called by the doctors is because of the head clash that they had, which was, unfortunate, but it just, sometimes happens and maybe Dubois does lean ahead in a bit at times. So, it does happen, but Dubois, other than, of course, getting the head clash and everything like that, she is looking really good at the moment, and I feel like she's on the high of her career and improving with every fight. She's still only in her 20s and she's still looking very good. I believe she's like 23, 24, something like that, which is crazy for what she's already kind of going on and achieving. But I feel like boxer are definitely not in a rush to really progress her too quickly. Saying the level of 50-50 on paper fights or tough evenly matched fights on this card, I feel like this will maybe stoop that a little bit lower. I mean, Shin isn't a bad fighter at all, and she's only 30 years of age and she's had a lot of professional fights and had a lot of success. I mean, she kind of had her most notable loss being versus Persoon, which is, a good fighter. I mean, Persoon kind of lost versus Baumgartner. I think it went to a draw, similarly to the situation with Dubois and Kamara last time out for Persoon, but she had a very close fight versus Katie Taylor back in the day, and so, she isn't a bad fighter to lose to, but like I say, Shin is very experienced for the age in which she is, 30 years of age. She's representing South Korea. There isn't really many kind of big boxers in general that are coming out of South Korea. So if she is able to cause a huge upset, then it'll be a huge win. She's had some really kind of grueling, excellent fights where she is showcasing that she can, really dig deep, really just continuously come forwards and just throw like crazy, and come with that bit more aggression, and be able to keep matching the pace throughout the fight. But I feel like Dubois, like I say, is in a better position in her career than she ever has been before. I feel like with Shane McGuigan, she's been progressing better, looking better with every fight, looking more destructive with every fight. And Dubois has been able to, in the past, have success against fighters and, be able to drop them, but she's never really been able to, capitalize on dropping them and hurting them and really be able to turn it up to be able to get them out of there. She always kind of, drops them and then seems to fade off a that little bit. But I feel like she's going to be able to win via TKO in round 7. I feel like Shin is a very game come forward fighter, so I feel like the first couple rounds could be an entertaining one, but I feel like Dubois is much more physical than that of Shin. I feel like Shin can really just drop her guard and just throw very recklessly, aggressively, but just recklessly. The more tired she gets throughout the fight, and I feel like Dubois can probably drop her early and then be able to actually stop her and get her out of there in round 7, and be able to put on a good victory there, which is yet again another progression fight, another step in the right direction, another big victory. At that point, you have to be kind of hoping that a fight versus the likes of Beatrice Ferreira does happen. When I did my video of 10 fights I want to see in 2025, that was one of them, Dubois versus Ferreira. I feel like that's a huge fight, an excellent fight. I mean, I just feel like the only way that it will happen will be through a Riyadh season show because, like I say, Dubois is so young. I don't feel like Boxer are going to risk putting her in with too many kind of names straight away, or realistically within the next 5 fights. You kind of have to think it has to be in the next 5 fights, but like I say, we'll have to wait and see who gets involved with it. But in my opinion, if she beats Shin convincingly here, then she has to fight Ferreira. So hopefully we will see that. But I've been saying this for the past couple of fights now, and it just doesn't seem to be happening. And so, she's continually getting better. I don't feel like she's overlooking her opponents, but hopefully, like I say, if she does get a big stoppage win, finally, then we can see the progression move on. going back now to speak about the main events, like I say, an excellent undercard with some great names, some very good matchups as well. But yeah, to speak about Jonas that bit more. I mean, Jonas, I feel like in her last fight looked much improved from the Maya fight. Against Maya, she looked very, she didn't look amazing. She was getting beaten to the punch quite a lot. She was seemingly being frustrated quite a lot. She looked like she was getting dragged into a fight, and in general, she won the fight, but it was very controversial. A lot of people disagreed, and there was a lot of backlash from the result. And so, it wasn't the best of performances for Jonas, and I feel like the rematch has to kind of be made if Jonas does beat Price and if Mayer does beat Ryan in their rematch. I feel like that fight has to be made again. I'm surprised it kind of wasn't made again already, but I feel like at the same time Jonas was kind of backed into a corner because I feel like she, first of all, wasn't really getting fights after the Mayer fight. There was quite a bit of time where she just wasn't getting a fight. Then her corner and Joe Gallagher seemed to really, get involved and step in and be like, why is she not getting fights? And then she kind of got offered the fight versus Abazin, which was an easy way to get a world title. To be completely honest, it was by far the weakest of champions, but then she kind of seemingly had to agree that she would fight Price if Price was able to beat Matthias, and so then she kind of got backed into a corner. I don't think realistically she cared too much about the Price fight. I think she was quite happy to let Price carry on winning against these opponents in which nobody's ever really heard of, who are ranked well, but like I say, nobody's heard of, and wasn't really too bothered about it. But I felt like Boxer kind of forced her to be like, you're 40 years of age here, you may not have loads left in your career, you kind of have to be willing to take the fight because like I say, we want to make as much money out of you as a product before you end up retiring because, there could be one bad night in the office coming where the age does catch up to you and you aren't able to fight at the high level anymore. And so, I don't feel like Jonas wants this fight too much. I feel like she's the deserved face of all women's show, and I feel like that's another reason why she was willingly going to accept to take the fight versus Price because she is the face of it, and she definitely sells better than that of Price, and so she deserves to be another headline slot on a big show, being able to be the main focus, to be able to really sell. And so she's gotten all them kind of wishes, and so maybe that's the reason why she is given the opportunity to be the well given the opportunity to Price to come and challenge her for her belts as well. So it's an interesting one. I just feel like I say, the unification may not have happened if it was all, Jonas's way, in my opinion. I feel like Jonas probably would have preferred to go down maybe the route of waiting for a Maya rematch, to be completely honest. Price, though, she has been showcasing a bit of something different in the build up to this fight. Like I say, she seemed to outsmart to Jonas in that kind of one little incident in which kind of went viral. But then, she's, like I say, had that back and forth. She went kind of out of nowhere and just started saying she's better, she's quicker, she's younger, she's stronger, and all of that, and talking about her Olympic pedigree, she seemingly is trying to showcase a bit of something different. I mean, a lot of people have been put off a bit from Lauren Price in her, recent contest. She's looked very good, but a lot of them have kind of just thought that she's quite a boring talker and not really offering too much in that aspect to really get the fans up and ready for a fight. I don't feel like Price is ever going to be somebody who is going to be pushing and shoving people at press conferences or really going too crazy, but she seems to be coming into this a bit more confident in herself and knowing that the last big women's event was Marshall versus Shields, so there has to be that kind of level to live up to, that hype to live up to, and I feel like it's built a bit of a hype around it. I mean, perhaps people would say it's maybe cockiness to an extent, and maybe that could come across as that. I hope she isn't going to be fighting arrogantly or anything like that, but it is nice to see that she's willing to, speak a bit more and just vocalize herself and back herself a bit more as well. And it's definitely a kind of new versus old generation type fight. It's, could be the passing of the baton, the passing of the torch, as people say, but still, it is going to be a very tough test. Like I say, you don't want to see her coming into this thinking she's a big knockout artist because of the Matthias win, where Matthias, pretty much every shot that Price landed was hurting and damaging Matthias. I felt like Matthias was just way out of her depth in that fight, and hadn't been tested anywhere near the same level and looked very poor in that fight. And so, I don't feel like Price should be coming into this fight thinking she's a big, knockout artist or anything like that, because, realistically, I still don't believe she is. I feel like she has good timing and she can hurt opponents, but I just don't feel like, say, she's a big knockout artist. But she is going to be coming into this fight representing Wales, so she's going to have pressure on her in that aspect. I mean, Jonas is going to have the pressure of Liverpool on her and the pressure upon, being a world champion for a longer period of time. But Price is going to have the pressure of Welsh boxing to an extent on her back. I mean, realistically, there isn't really too much great going on from Welsh boxing at the moment. I mean, Joe Cordina in most recent times has lost for the world title versus Kakache and hasn't really been given too many opportunities since then. Was meant to be fighting Shakur Stevenson, but that didn't happen, so there's not really much going on with him. Gavin Gwynn lost versus Vuong. There was meant to be a rematch there, but now Vuong's gone on to fight Flynn. If I'm unless I'm missing somebody, I don't feel like there's really too much going on with Welsh boxing at the moment, and there is a very good fan base there who love boxing and can and will get behind one of their fighters, one of their own. And so Price is kind of, like I said, the one that's representing Welsh boxing at the highest of levels at the moment, and so she has that pressure upon her, and she's touched upon that quite a few times in her interviews, and so it's going to be, more so with this fight. If she wins this one, maybe she'll get a big fight again out in Wales. This is a big, big moment for her in her career. To kind of give that base kind of overview as both fighters before I kind of speak about them attribute wise. Jonas is 16-2-1 with 9 KOs, and Price is 8-0 with 2 KOs. This fight is for the IBF, IBO, WBC, and WBA World Welterweight titles. Jonas's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Sabazin, and Price's last fight was a win via TKO in round 3 versus Matthias. They are both southpaws. Jonas is 40 and Price is 30. Jonas is 5'8" and Price is 5'5.5". Jonas's losses have come versus Taylor in 2021 and Obenyoff in 2018. And, just touch that a little bit more about what I was just saying. Like I say, both of them being southpaws, I don't feel like Price has had to deal with that too much so far, and so that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Of course, like I've touched upon, Jonas being 40 years of age, she could just be one fight away before, everything catches up to her age catches up to her, and she just doesn't look the same or as good, and this fight could showcase that. Like I say, it's the kind of new generation coming through, with Price arguably in her prime at the moment, but Jonas is a much bigger fighter, and so he's going to have to make that count. He's going to have to make that, visible in the fight with her physicality, because I feel like she can be much more physical than that of Price and can have more success in that aspect as a result, but she's going to have to make that height and physicality count. To speak about them both, attribute-wise individually as fighters, Jonas, she changes levels well. I feel like she's very strong and snappy in her combinations and will go down to the body, will loop over to the head, and that's something in which I don't necessarily know if Price offers too much. And she was doing that very nicely against Habazin in their fight, and that was the main success she was having against Michaela Mayer when she was doing them type of shots. She beats you down and was convincingly beating down Habazin throughout their fight. She, in my opinion, has the more power in the two of them. I feel like all of her shots are kind of thrown with more so intent and is going to seemingly be stronger, more punishing punches out of the two of them. She's not got a crazily good knockout ratio, but she was able to hurt Abazin in that fight, and credit to Abazin for staying around and being able to take the shots. But it was a more powerful display, in my opinion, even though Jonas was able to knock out Matthias. Like I say, maybe Jonas might be thinking she has the more power. I'm not too sure. Like I say, she's physical. I feel like she's the more physical out of the two of them. I feel like she can set quite a good pace and can maintain a good pace where she is consistently walking you down and coming forwards, even if she is off the back foot. She can typically, deal with pressure well. I feel like she can deal with physicality well. This is where the experience is going to come into a factor. Maybe Price hasn't had to deal with quite the level of physicality, and so Jonas has showcased again in that last performance where Habazin was trying to smother Jonas, trying to make it difficult for her. She was able to deal with the pressure very well and respond very well as a result. She puts her all into her shots, like I say, all the time. She has a nice tight guard. She, like I say, walks you down. She's a rugged, tough, durable opponent who's willing to give their all and, strong-willed. And of course, again, that's another thing in which we haven't seen yet from Price. I feel like she's consistent in her work. We're going to be able to see her consistently keep up the same kind of output, consistently fight the same way throughout the whole kind of fight. She's probably that better aggressor out of the two. When Price wants to plant her feet and be that more aggressive, she doesn't always have the same kind of level of success. I feel like Jonas is the better aggressor, and she is the better in close type fighter, in my opinion, out of the two. Negatives about her, I feel like she doesn't really deal with head movement too well. So, I don't feel like Price has got crazily good head movement, but maybe her defensive movement is a bit better and maybe can fluster Jonas at times. She is, like I say, flat footed, so she can be circled around and moved around, and Price is quite good at circling around after her shots and, moving around after her shots. She covers up a bit at times, and it means that Price, maybe with the straight shot combinations that she throws, is able to have success from them. She has minimal head movement. She can be beaten to the punch, and that's what Price is probably going to try and do with her superior hand speed. She doesn't really change her game plan too much, and I don't necessarily know if Price does that either too much. I feel like they're both quite stuck in their ways as, the fighting kind of styles in which they both have. She, doesn't really get in and out. She's quite happy to stay in range and just try and slug it out a bit more, and that's where she can be beaten to the punch, and she can be beaten, and she was beaten to the punch consistently by the taller fighter in Michaela Mayer in their fight. She can be dragged into a fight. I feel like she has a lack of a jab, so she doesn't always set up her shots that well. I feel like she can kind of force her way in range a bit at times and, like I say, not set up as well. She doesn't always move off the rope. She can get tired, and when she's doing that, she's not really kind of moving off the ropes. So if Price is able to put it on her into the later rounds, she may be able to have success where Jonas is just loading up and waiting for a big shot. And I feel like she's the less controlled out of the two, and the fights can be that bit more messier than that of Price. Price, as a fighter, though, she finds her range very well. She is going to be fighting much more so at a mid range than what Jonas will probably want. So it's going to be, a clear contrast in styles, which I feel like is going to be very interesting to see how it works out. I feel like quite often, whenever there's a clear contrast like that, the fight's going to end well and be a good fight, and so I believe it probably will be. She invites you in quite well, and then timed with nice shots well, and she was doing that consistently versus Matthias. She's sharp, she's got very good straight shot combinations like I've touched upon, and just straight shots in general. She's well skilled, you can see the clear fundamentals are very much so there, which she definitely picked up upon from her amateur time. She keeps her stance very well. She won't just square up when she's in close, which is nice. She's probably the able to get her front foot in better maybe than that of Jonas. Like I say, I'm not too sure. Jonas is going to want to get in close and just slug it out. She's not really going to care how she's going to get in range, but Price is typically quite good at getting her foot in and then, throwing off a shot and then trying to move out of the way. She follows off her jab well. She's a high tempo fighter, and so is probably going to try and tire out Jonas. She moves around her shots well, and she can beat you to the punch. Negatives about her, I feel like her, like I've said, she can move around the punches well, but when she's dealing with pressure and going on the back foot, I feel like she doesn't really circle off quite as well as what I would like her to see. She can be quite an upright fighter who's fighting quite tensely and then just moving back in straight lines with her chin up in the air quite often. She can be caught during combinations. When she's throwing her shots, she can get often caught with a big shot, just, you know, forcing her shots to get through, but if she's getting caught consistently with shots when she's throwing her combinations, she can be hurt by somebody like Jonas who, can make it in close and will punish you if you are just throwing their, standing throwing combinations for too long. She drops her lead hand. She doesn't fight amazingly, I don't think, on the back foot. I don't feel like either of them really do. So it's going to be interesting to see who's the one that's going to get the other one on the back foot. She has limited head movement herself. I feel like her chin, like I say, can be in the air. She needs to plant her feet at the right times. Sometimes, she doesn't plant her feet at the best of times and then can be a bit swingy in combinations. Like I say, can be just allowing opponents to get in close a bit too easily, and then, like I say, getting caught when she's throwing. She throws from quite low. I feel like she's definitely the less physical, and I feel like she struggles to pin down opponents quite often at times as well. Jonas is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Jonas will win via unanimous decision. Maybe she's a favourite, maybe she's not. It's definitely down to which way you look at it. I mean, Jonas has definitely won more, but Price is, like I say, the new crop coming through, which has that expectation upon her. But I feel like Jonas is going to be able to give her an experience lesson. I feel like Jonas looked very good in her last fight versus Sabazin, showed that she can still operate at a high level, and I feel like she's going to try and walk Price down. I feel like Price may be coming in with this new attitude where she may be a bit less disciplined and maybe wanting to get into a fight and be willing to get into a fight. I feel like Jonas, if she can get in close and land consistently when Price is throwing, I feel like Jonas will be able to land cleaner and land better, and then push Price onto the back foot where she's not too used to being, and she may not circle off as well as what she can do. And I do feel like Jonas is going to be able to really kind of wear her down, beat her down to the body, showcase something that she hasn't seen yet, and be able to win via unanimous decision, which would be, yet again Jonas showing that underdog story that she has and showcasing that she can still do it at the highest of levels at 40 years of age. She's always really defied her odds in her career, and I feel like she'll be able to do that again. And then, who she can go on to fight next. There's only realistically one fight left in the welterweight division, and that is the winner of Mayer versus Ryan in their rematch. I'm glad to see that there's a rematch there to be made, because it was there to be made and it should have happened, and it's good to see that that is happening. I was thinking that maybe not, but now, like I said, the winner of that should go on to fight Jonas, and then the loser of that can go on to fight Price if she does lose. So, I definitely feel like there's a tournament format there ready waiting to happen. So hopefully that all goes ahead and that all happens. But yeah, that is my prediction. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.